Alderman Palmer.
Here.
Alderman Adelman.
Here.
7 present, 2 absent. Mr. Acting Mayor, we have a quorum.
Thank you. We all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First item on the agenda are reports of city officers, and the first is comments by the acting mayor. This is Red Ribbon Week, and is it Andy Durain who's going to talk about that? You go to the podium, please.
Good evening. My name is Andy Duran. I am the Executive Director of LEAD and Speak Up Prevention Coalition here in Lake Forest, 400 East Illinois Road in Gorton. Here today quickly to talk to you about Red Ribbon Week, which is the 27th annual Red Ribbon Week. Takes place October 20th through 28th, and we have lots of activities around Red Ribbon Week, including the Red Ribbon Race, which a number of our students in our community and families will be participating in, which is Saturday, November the 3rd. While we have lots of activities going on for Red Ribbon Week, you can find those at leadingefforts.org, our website. What I really wanted to chat with you today about is perhaps thinking about adopting an ordinance regarding medical marijuana. As you may be aware, there's some state legislature that has previously voted down the legalization of medical marijuana in the state of Illinois. It's going to be up for vote again. And as the legislation currently stands, because Lake Forest resides in 2 Senate districts, there would be the possibility of having 2 dispensaries in 2 cultivation areas, so 4 total places here in Lake Forest. One of the most aggressive parts of the legislation, if it passes as is that any home rule community such as Lake Forest, once the state legislation passes, cannot then adopt their own ordinance. And this could be passed at any time. And this is the type of community, at least in our opinion and in LEAD's research, where one of these dispensaries would pop up. In every case where there's a dispensary that's popped up, home prices have gone down, crime rates have gone up, youth access to marijuana has skyrocketed. And I'd like to work with the city to try to create an ordinance here before legislation passes. Thank you.
Thank you. And why don't you work with our city manager regarding your ideas?
Absolutely.
The next item is the appointment of Mike Havey to fill the unexpired term of Christie Bishop to the Board of Police and Fire Commission. Do we need a motion on that? Have a motion on that?
So moved.
Second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Next is the appointment of city engineer, presented by Michael Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor, members of the City Council. This evening, staff is requesting City Council approval and appointment of the city engineer / city surveyor. With the resignation and moving on of our city engineer, Ramesh Kanapareddy, who did a wonderful job for us here at the city, moved down to the city of Highland Park. We went through the request for qualification process to look at contracting out engineering services. It was after analysis internally, that our belief that we believed we could handle PE services by contracting them out, that there wasn't going to be a large need for them over a 40-hour week. And with the different items that are required to do watershed development, review permits, bluff stabilization, ravine permits, IDOT and IEPA permit applications, it's a limited amount of work, and we therefore felt that we could contract out those services, save the city some money. On top of it, our current engineering staff is able to answer and address all the questions thus far. With Ramesh's moving on, we've had 5 weeks now where we actually have not had a need to use a PE, an outside PE. Our engineering staff has been able to review all the different petitions, applications, and address all the concerns at various meetings. So with that, through our RFQ process, we interviewed 2 engineering firms. We sent it out to 5 local firms, 3 responded, and we are recommending this evening Ewald Hamilton out of Vernon Hills. Excellent engineering firm. They've been around for a long time. We as city staff have worked with Ewald for many, many years. They actually perform all the engineering for Lake Forest College. But their 2 engineers are here with us this evening, and I'd like to introduce them. But before that, if you have specific questions, regarding engineering, I'd be happy to answer those.
How much will this save us annualized approximately?
We're right now looking at a trial period where we'd like to run this through the end of the fiscal year, so approximately 6.5 months. For that period of time, we are also going to look to bring on a temporary engineering assistant. As we go into the design phase of all our projects for next fiscal year, there's a lot of surveying and design that we're going to need to do. So when we take into account that expense, savings over the 6-month period will be approximately $33,000. But again, the focus of the PE position will simply be on those permit reviews for watershed development issues, as well as any plans that need to be stamped when they're sent on to IEPA and IDOT. Otherwise, our 4 engineers on staff are very, very well qualified and have been able to address everything thus far.
Michael, I think when you and I first spoke about it, I had some concern about kind of feeling like making sure that we didn't have a big gap there. But after you and I have talked about it, and we talked a bit more about stuff, it sounds like, A, as you said, the staff we have now is terrific, which is great. And B, it is a kind of a trial period, so let's see how it works and see if it makes sense.
And one of the things too, that as the department head and responsible for engineering and the other sections within Public Works, and I understand one of the things we want to improve upon, work upon, is more the coordination with regards to aesthetics, preservation, those types of issues that come up, whether it was the South Beach Access Road or various projects. I completely understand that those things, there needs to be a balance. And as I work with our engineering staff, they too agree, and we're going to be working with that in mind. So.
And just, again, we did have opportunity to discuss this at Public Works. Our meeting earlier today, this appointment of not having a city employee, it's not going to actually delay projects that are underway for the city having to consult.
Not at all. Again, we have not yet had a project submitted to us since our city engineer's departure that has required a PE stamp or a PE review. We know of one that's potentially coming our way within the next week or two, which will require a watershed development permit. So it's necessary for us to bring on a city engineer. But to answer your question, no, it has not delayed anything.
Okay.
And Mike, I think we talked about this at Public Works as well, but will this choice allow us to have perhaps have more input as to those aesthetic issues that you spoke about?
One of the things and I understand going into this that we're trying to achieve is making engineering more accessible, and I completely understand the importance of engineering's relationship to our community development department, and the different aesthetic issues that arise with potential developers, the preservation issues that come up. So one of the things I'm working towards and I want to see enhanced within engineering is that good, solid understanding that not everything is about engineering. And in fact, there are ways that we can engineer things where they aesthetically look good as well, versus the very traditional engineering approach of things. And I firmly believe we've got the people on staff to be able to do that. So we will proceed that way.
Any other questions? Would you like to?
If I can, I would like to introduce the 2 gentlemen that will be representing Gewalt Hamilton again for the next 6 months. We'll bring it back to you in May with a review. But Steve Perez and Dan Strand, I'm sorry. I was going to say Shannon. Steve has been with Gewalt Hamilton for 19 years. Dan has been with them for 10 years. Again, both PEs. And how we are going to work this relationship is, as needed, we will bring 1 or 2 of them in for at least a 4-hour period each week, again, as we need it. If we don't have any plan reviews or any issues requiring a PE, we will not be using their services. This will simply be based on as needed basis. So we received our hourly rates, which were extremely favorable. And we believe 16 hours a month is probably a high number, but that's what we're estimating at this point.
Okay, thank you. Could I have a motion to appoint Gewalt Hamilton Associates?
And so, So
as
moved
city
to
engineer?
appoint Gewalt Hamilton Associates to the position as city engineer,
Through
and that
May-
would be through May 6th of 2013.
Thank you.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Great, thank you.
Thank you. That ends the comments of the mayor, or acting mayor as it may be. Next are the comments of the city manager.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor, members of the City Council. Before I introduce our first guest, I will just note that earlier this evening, there was a little power failure, so the Finance Committee wasn't broadcast live. It was taped. It will be rebroadcast, but they assured me that they've gotten that reset, so you are live right now, so live and in living color. The first item under my report this evening is to introduce our Executive Director of the Library, Kay Grabby, who's going to do a community spotlight on Lake Forest Library and what's going on there. So, Kay?
We're going to get the internet up for you.
Oh, okay. I hope so. You didn't make it crash, did you?
No, I didn't know where it was on here. You can't do anything without the internet. While she's getting it, I'll mention briefly.
Kay, you're going to have to use the microphone or the podium.
When I get it done.
Okay. You can take it off the stand if you want. There you go.
Is that better?
Yep.
The American Library Association sets aside a week in October to recognize Friends of the Library organizations. And I know you know about our Friends of the Library organization because they have that wonderful book sale that this year raised $122,000, not peanuts. And over the 37 years that they've been around, they have given the library $2 million to spend on a variety of services and programs. So we decided that a week wasn't enough, so we set aside the month of October. So all during the month of October, we're celebrating the Friends. When I go on the website, you'll see some of what we've done, and there's a great display in the foyer of the library with pictures covering from the very first book sale, which was back in 1976, and they made $4,000. So they've come a long way. They've had 37 book sales, and they're doing quite well. So we want everyone to learn about and appreciate the Friends. As I scroll here, let's see. The Friends, by the way, for those of you that saw our website a while ago, it was not very terrific. It was quite a mishmash, so it's much improved, and the Friends paid for this. We had worked for 7 months on it, and we're really pleased with it. So this is the celebration for the Friends. If we scroll down, we can. The pictures are small for you here, but if you go on, you can see them. Pictures of where the current sale is, which is in the rec center of the gym. We are much appreciative to Mary Van Arsdale and the rec center for that. The old book sale, you remember, had been in the park. You remember the tent. And this is the beach cart with one of the paperback exchanges that the Friends gave us years ago. So if you get a chance, come into the lobby and take a look and see. It's quite impressive what they've done. Let's go back here. And the other big thing that I wanted to mention besides the celebration of the Friends is the windows on the library. The building is 81 years old. It opened for business in 1931, and for 81 years, it's been patch, patch, patch. And last year we put a chunk of money into the roof, and this year we have to do window restoration. There are 26 windows. We're working with a company called Restoration Works, Inc. They've worked in the community, they've worked on Ragdale, they've worked on the Roby House, they've worked at Harvard and Yale. The board is really pleased with their work. 75% of the cost will be paid by the Friends of the Library, and another 5 to 10% will be paid with current donations. So only a small amount will come from the taxpayers. And when we're done, the window should last another 50 years. I won't be here, probably none of us will be, but the building will still be there. The other thing I wanted to mention real briefly is, first I want to show you DVD to go. When I was here the last time, I wasn't going to mention this, but Bob brought it up. This is what we call the DVD to go. It looks like Redbox, except it's blue with a little red. Instead of using your credit card to check out a DVD and pay for it, you use your library card, scan it, and you can check out a DVD. You can check out 3. We opened it in April of 2011, and it's been extremely popular. Right now, about 7 to 10% of the DVDs we circulate from the library come from this machine. This is located at the Milwaukee Road train station. It's very popular with people. They use it in a variety of ways, and we're really pleased to have it. It holds 1,600 DVDs. We don't have 1,600 in it yet. It's taken a while. We have about 1,300 or 1,400. So that's something that we're really pleased with. Let's go back and see. The library box. This is also something one of the staff has been working on. It's links to Wi-Fi. You need, I have to read this because I'm not a techie. It's a Wi-Fi router with a USB drive and a laptop battery. And you can put them together and you can access Wi-Fi any place or in the library, and you can load on it your own compositions. We encourage people to put music on it. They can put your artwork on it. You can put your writing on it. It's for what they call Creative Commons, copyright-free material. We have some ebooks and some of that kind of stuff on it. But one is in the library, so you can use it there. And it's going to move around in the community. It spent a month at Caribou Coffee. We have a few things on it. We have a writing group that meets that's going to put some things on it. But it's kind of a neat new thing that we're trying out. The other thing I'll mention real briefly is some of the downloads that we have available. You can download ebooks at the library. We've had ebooks since 2009. You can also download music, Freegal. It's most of the Sony catalog. This is where the ebooks are. It's something called My Media Mall. It's ebooks and audiobooks, all downloadable and all free. So you don't have to pay for those. The last thing I'm going to mention real briefly is live homework help. This is something called tutor.com. It's going to, I don't want to go there. I want to sign in. Well, I guess it's going to make me sign in. I don't want to do that. It's a tutoring program live. It works from about 11 o'clock in the morning till about, from about 2 o'clock in the afternoon till 11 o'clock at night. Elementary school, high school, primarily. You click on it, put your library card number in, get an account, and you can actually work online with a teacher. We've been promoting it for a while. We recently got a live link, a direct link at the middle school on their intranet. So the kids can click on it right from school. It also has stuff for adults. There's resume help available online live. There's also all of those SAT and LSAP and all those tests you can do online too. So it's really a nice program. And we've been promoting it, and we just think we're not getting enough use from it. So that's what's new, and that's really, I didn't want to take too much of your time. So if you have any real quick questions, I can answer them. Otherwise, I'll let you get on with your meeting.
Okay, I don't have a question, but I will tell you, even though it doesn't hold 1,600 videos or DVDs, I think we've been there with our kids 1,600 times.
Well,
So
we
from the time you
appreciate it.
installed it, we've been big fans, so thank you for that. We love it.
Good. Well, we did hear from one father who apparently they use it as a homework incentive. So when the homework is done, and you can put a hold on it from home.
Right.
You don't have to go there and stand. You can go in, put a hold on it, see what's available, and then just go in and pick it up. So we're
It's
glad
great.
you used
Thank
it.
you.
Good. Anything else?
You know, I've been shadowing your presentation at your website. I didn't realize how fantastic your website is.
It's really nice. We worked 7 months on it. It was a real labor of love.
It's
Money, too.
terrific. Word has to be put out there for everybody to become aware of
Well,
it.
people haven't had any problem using it, so we know that it's easier to use than it was before, because it was getting hard for us to find stuff on the old one. So if we can't find it, we know you can. Anything else?
Kay, I have a quick question for you. Probably some 15 to 20 years ago, I think it was then Mayor Butler said, what's the future of libraries with technological advancements and so forth?
Do you remember what I answered?
I did. You said you'd always be around.
Oh, well.
But let me ask you, based on now looking back and looking forward with what's going on at the state of Illinois and so forth, what are some of the pressures or challenges that libraries face going forward?
Well, with the lack of state funding, the big problem is what we call interlibrary loan delivery. In other words, we've always told you you can borrow a book. If we don't have it, we can get it from someplace else. They're still funding delivery, but they're probably going to look at outsourcing it, which means that then the sorting and packaging will be up to the individual libraries. We don't know where it's going to go, but we've been putting some money aside in the budget just in case it suddenly disappears. So, but the ebook thing is not, that's just another way of getting information. Reading literacy is what we're about, not books. I tell people to think of the book as a container. It's reading that we're trying to do. Grow readers and promote literacy.
Very good, thank you.
So I think we'll be around. The windows will last too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item under my report is a presentation by the Spirit of 67 Foundation, and is Megan Morris here? You're not Megan Morris. I know you.
Good evening. My name is Megan Morris, and I'm the Vice President of Membership for the Spirit of 67 Foundation. And tonight with me is our new superintendent, who is going to read the proclamation for the official week in Lake Forest of Spirit of 67.
Thank you, Megan. It's my privilege to be here and to ask some of our District 67 students. We have some of them joining us. Kids, have you ever been to the library? Yeah? So we've got a great community resource in our library, and another one of our tremendous community resources come in the form of our tireless volunteers. And some of the moms have brought their children with us today. So we are delighted to proclaim and announce the Spirit of 67 Spirit Week in Lake Forest on October 15th through October 19th. The Spirit of 67 Foundation funds enriching and enhancing programming for our elementary and middle school students. Students, faculty, and staff are the recipients of grants dedicated to the academics, the arts, and technology in their schools. Over $2.5 million in grants have been awarded since the Spirit's inception in 1985. And clearly, a strong school system is the foundation of a strong community. And this year, the Spirit of 67 Foundation has worked closely with our local businesses in what is called the Live, Work, and Play initiative. And all week, participating stores will display the Spirit logo in their windows, and members who have received a donor card are eligible for discounts on their purchases. This week will culminate on in the annual Spirit of 67 Foundation Luncheon and Silent Auction this Friday, October 19th. And we'd like you to join us for what we hope will be a spirit-filled week. So in honor of Spirit Week, we'd like to ask you to indulge our children in having a photo opportunity before the council, and so that they can advertise this more.
It's easier to be in. It's easier to be in front than to be behind. Let's all stand up.
Yeah.
I just moved into so.
Notice some of them practicing their smiles. Okay, right here. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and good luck. And that completes my report for this evening.
Thank you. Next are comments by council members. The first is from Finance, the Finance Committee report by Alderman Schoenheider.
Thank you. At the Finance Committee meeting, we discussed the requirement the city has per Illinois statute to file a treasurer's report, and we need this evening the council to take action and acknowledge the receipt of the FY 2012 treasurer's report that was discussed at the Finance Committee.
Could I have a motion to acknowledge receipt of the fiscal year 2012 treasurer's report?
And I'll move to acknowledge receipt of the fiscal year 2012 Treasurer's Report.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries.
Thank you.
Next is Public Works Committee report by Alderman Novit.
Okay, and it won't be that long of a report, but the item on the agenda would be the request to ratify the engagement of Black Engineering, for the design services for Forest Park infrastructure improvements. We did have an opportunity to discuss that at the Public Works Committee meeting that was held at 5:15 earlier today. At this point, if there's questions from council, we'd be looking for a motion otherwise.
Any questions?
Well, I did have.
Go ahead.
I did have some people contact me today with concerns about the speed at which this came through, and I would like to say that based on the concerns that I've heard, the recommendation for the engagement with Black Engineering and the things that follow have satisfied the concerns I've heard. I just wanted to let people know that I had concerns. Telephoned in. So.
Okay. Any other questions? If not, could I have a motion to ratify the engagement of Black Engineering for design services for the Forest Park infrastructure improvements in the amount of $67,000, with the city to pay 80%, totaling $53,600, and the Forest Park Project Board responsible for the remainder of $13,400?
So moved.
Second.
A roll call?
Alderman Novit,
Aye.
Alderman Waldeck,
Aye.
Alderman Moore,
Aye.
Alderman Schoenheider,
Aye.
Alderman Tack, Alderman Palmer,
Aye.
Alderman Adelman.
Aye.
7 yeas, no nays, motion carries.
Thank you. Next is the opportunity for citizens to address the city council on non-agenda items. Right, hearing none, we will move to
Well,
the...
there was indication.
Was there? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I had some questions on that contract. Was there a time that I was supposed to be able to ask that question?
I think the time has passed. That was on the agenda. This is non-agenda items. Would you like to make a statement, though?
No, I had questions about where that 80% came from. My name is Rami Lopat, but could you just clarify when I was supposed to ask a question?
We did not have it. It was up from the Public Works Committee, so we didn't open it up for public questions here.
There is another Forest Park item coming up later if you'd like to ask some questions at that point in time on the agenda.
Okay, I'm sorry. I would like to say something then, if you could permit me. I would like to ask tonight where that 80% figure came from, because it seems to me that it's putting the cart before the horse to approve that contract at 80% of city funding before you have a financial agreement that the public has reviewed. So where'd the 80% come from? And I would like to very much, I think I'm not alone in wanting to know what the total amount of money to be spent in this park, including non-501c3 monies is, for all the other different things that are going on in this park. What's the number?
And I'm happy to go over that later on. That will be the next agenda.
It's going to be at the end of the session, is it not?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Next, we'll move to the items for the omnibus vote consideration. The first is to reappoint Desha Kalmar, Director of Human Resources, as the IMRF authorized agent. The second is approval to renew the contract for Microsoft software licensing based on state of Illinois contract pricing. The third is to approve a license agreement with Northern Trust for the space formerly occupied by Lake Forest Bank and Trust at the Telegraph Road train station. The fourth is consideration of ordinances approving recommendations from the Building Review Board, first reading and if desired by the City Council, final approval. And the fifth is consideration of an ordinance approving a recommendation from the Zoning Board of Appeals. Again, first reading and if desired by the City Council, final approval. And the final thing is the approval of the October 1 regular City Council minutes. Does anyone want to break out any of those items from the omnibus agenda? If not, could I have a motion to approve the omnibus agenda?
I'll move to approve the omnibus agenda.
I have a second?
Second.
Roll call?
Alderman Novit.
Aye.
Alderman Waldeck.
Aye.
Alderman Moore.
Aye.
Alderman Schoenheider.
Aye.
Alderman Tack. Alderman Palmer.
Aye.
Alderman Adelman.
Aye.
7 yeas, no nays, motion carries.
I have a quick question for Vic. Alderman Waldeck pointed out earlier, if I'm not here for the minutes, or if I'm not here in a meeting, and the minutes are part of an omnibus, am I allowed to vote in favor of the?
Yes, you do not have to have been present at the meeting to vote on the minutes for that meeting.
You don't?
No.
Okay, all right.
And for clarification, there was no amendment to do final approval. So all of the two ordinances were first readings. Is that all right with everyone, or did some?
I believe that the omnibus agenda had all of that for both, well, I guess it wasn't made clear whether it was for waiver of that first reading.
Right, so can we?
If there's a motion to reconsider, it can certainly be.
We will have it reflected as final approval unless there's a motion to reconsider. All right.
Motion to reconsider then, I think.
Do you want to reconsider?
I think we should reconsider and waive first reading. Unless we have a problem with the.
I was just saying that we will let it stand as final,
Yeah.
unless you want it. Do you want it to be first reading only?
No, I thought it was the opposite. I apologize.
Okay,
Stand
so
is
for
fine.
clarification, it's the motion was to approve it as waiver of first and approval of final reading, correct?
Yes, sir.
And that was the second's intent as well.
All right. Okay, next item is ordinances, and I don't see anything under that. And then new business, consideration of a resolution adopting the Forest Park Agreement.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor and members of the City Council. Back in May, the City Council unanimously approved a master plan for the redevelopment of Forest Park. At that time, you also directed the city attorney and the city manager to work with the Forest Park Project Board in developing an agreement between the project board and the city with respect to the financing and execution of that master plan. Tonight, what you have before you is first and foremost a resolution approving the agreement, but by doing so, you are also incorporating the budget and the master plan into that formal approval in that formal document. Over the course of the last, what would it be, 5 months, we've been meeting with representatives of the Forest Park Project Board, creating the master plan, the agreement, which I should say, really the template was the agreement that we used with the Market Square 2000 group back in 2000 for the redevelopment of Market Square. So that was sort of the basis in which we started. We've tweaked that, we've amended that, we've modified that, and also at the same time, the master plan has been going through some updating because the council may recall that there were a number of conditions back in May when you approved the master plan, and we wanted to make sure that those conditions also got incorporated into the final document that is sort of our guidepost for moving forward with the redevelopment project. The third component, which we just referred to earlier with respect to the engagement of Bleck Engineering, was that we needed to develop a budget that set forth what the estimated costs were from the various components of the improvement plan, and to then also take that budget and break down what would be the city's responsibility and what is the responsibility of the project board. Now let me step back and just address the question that was asked earlier. How did the 80-20 number come from? Really, that came to us with the assistance of Bleck Engineering based on the amount of work that he had to do for what we call city infrastructure improvements versus Forest Park Project Board improvements that they will be responsible for. Because much of the work that the Forest Park Project Board didn't require engineering services, i.e. landscaping, the cost of the memorials or the benches and so forth. So based on what Bleck was engaged to do in terms of infrastructure improvements per se, that his cost was divided 80-20 because 80% of that is city responsibility, 20% of that is the responsibility of the project board. And if you turn in your packet to roughly about page 67, 68, actually I guess page 70 of your packet, you'll see a budget that was put together there that breaks down the total cost of the various components of the improvement project by what is city responsibility and what is Forest Park Board responsibility. The total estimated budget that has been prepared with the assistance of both Bleck Engineering as well as representatives of the city and the Forest Park Project Board is roughly about $3.1 million. Of that total amount, roughly $800,000 is City of Lake Forest responsibility, and 2.4 will be for the project board to raise so that it could implement the master plan. The city's responsibilities are primarily in the area of the ring road, the storm sewer work, the lighting system improvements, and improvements to the south parking lot, as well as some other construction contingencies as we go forward. The Forest Park Project Board's costs, as I mentioned, include things like the new pathways that are in the plan, the stone benches, the site furnishings, some of the planting improvements, as well as a component that's a good example of how we divided up these costs is obviously the improvement of the ring road would be a city infrastructure cost under normal circumstances. However, the design called for a little higher grade improvement than what we would normally do, and so that added cost, and that's why you see the $100,000 included in there, is because the quality of the road would be elevated beyond what would be a normal city standard. So that's how we broke out some of the costs. As I said in the write-up, this is very similar to the way that we address costs in Market Square for the Market Square 2000 project, so that the city is only covering those costs that it would normally cover as a part of its capital improvement program or its infrastructure, and any enhancements beyond that is what then falls into the responsibility of the project board. I might also point out a couple of very important things set forth in the agreement. Number one is that the agreement really breaks down the cost between what we call infrastructure or city responsibilities versus what we're calling, I think the terminology is demonstration project, which is the project board, so that we make that distinction between what is truly a city responsibility and then what is more of a private responsibility over and above what we would normally do. The various components of the project plan will come back to the city for approval and the city council at various times for approval as well, so that this isn't sort of the final bite of the apple. There is still a review that's going to have to take place because we recognize that this is eventually going to be a city asset. We will be responsible for it, so we will need to make sure that any plans for improvement meet all city codes and all city permitting processes. And then the final step is recognizing that the project board is raising funds to implement their portion of the work, that this project can be phased in upon the approval of the city to allow them to do this in stages if need be as funding does become available. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. We also have, I think Michael Thomas and Bleck Engineering has an overview that gives you an idea of what the specific components are that are related to the city work, city infrastructure, if you'd like to see that. And I know the city attorney who's worked long and hard on the language of the agreement, would be happy to answer any questions you might, any specific questions to the agreement that you might have.
Before I invite questions from the citizens, I would ask, are there any questions from the council members?
Well, but there were some things that we discussed at Public Works that I think should be brought up as well. I know Alderman, I don't know if you want to talk about some of the deferred maintenance and timing of the project.
Well, there was some discussion, and you know, we went into a little depth as far as maintenance of the ring road, the storm sewers, and the lighting system, and the south car parking lot. And again, these are city maintenance items. If there was no Forest Park project, these items would have to be maintained by the city. It's a city responsibility. I believe at that meeting earlier today, there was representation from the engineer from Bleck who was present that the sewer system is in need of replacement. Grant, it might not have to be done this year, but it would have to be done in the near term, be it the next 2-3 years. Likewise, anyone who's been in the area of the Ring Road can testify or could certainly observe that the surface of the Ring Road does need updating. It's in need of replacement. Again, if that would be done next year, it would be questionable, but certainly within the next 5 years, it would be resurfaced, as would the south car parking lot. So again, these are city responsibilities. These are costs that we're going to incur regardless of the project. So again, phasing these improvements obviously should be done in concert with the Forest Park project. The last item that the city is responsible for would be the lighting systems and updating those items. And obviously, if we're digging or excavating, the optimal time to do that is before we resurface the street areas, instead of resurfacing, then digging them up again. It would be counterproductive. So again, these are items that we're going to incur no matter what. Those are the costs we're discussing today. So again, I think it's very straightforward. There is a contribution, of course, contributing to the 80-20 level for the additional $100,000 that would be applied to the Ring Road for the upgrading. Likewise, for the south car parking area, which would be roughly $200,000 over and above the city cost to upgrade. So that was basically some of the materials we covered at the Public Works meeting earlier. Again, if there's questions beyond, happy to address.
I think one other thing that we mentioned is actually something Alderman Moore brought up, was whether the amount of money that we're contemplating paying to Bleck Engineering should be included on this Forest Park Master Plan cost summary. Should that be noted as part of our cost?
Yeah, no, we'll add that.
Well, that's a soft cost, and these are hard construction costs, which raises the question, are there going to be other significant soft costs besides engineering? Or is that really the bulk of the soft costs, and then you get into this budget?
We don't anticipate any other soft costs. I will say, though, that the staff is very sensitive, much like Alderman Novit was just mentioning about our responsibility to the infrastructure and the maintenance of the infrastructure. We do have ongoing responsibilities, and you will see some of our crews out there this winter doing some tree clearing and those kinds of things. And so there would be some other fixed costs of city staff time, but that would be part of a normal ongoing maintenance of the property that we would do year in and year out. But as of this time, we're not anticipating any other soft costs.
And I think our idea too, and this may be a good or bad idea, but our idea too was just to give, for public purposes, just to give the public a more, the most accurate statement of what we believe the cost of the project would be, including everything we know right now.
I think there's also some, unless I misunderstood something, the 80-20 is only related to Bleck's cost.
That is correct.
It has nothing to do with the costs of construction or anything like that. Those are specifically broken out as responsibilities of the city or responsibilities not of the city by the choosing of the park board. So all we're talking about is 80%, we're paying 80% of the fee. Is it public? The
Right.
fee? $67,000?
Right.
And 20% of that fee is being paid by the park board. So that's, in the grand scheme, although it's a lot of money, it's an insignificant portion of the project.
Well, those would be costs that you would have to incur, going back to Alderman Novit's point, at such time that you were going to improve the storm sewer, you're going to improve the
Right.
roads. I mean,
We'd
those
have to
would
pay
be
for the engineering
That's
anyway.
correct.
I think it's also important that, and I did have a question as to why this seemed to be being rushed through, I think was somebody's, we need a number for our budget meeting coming up. So this is budgeted money, not allocated money, and we need a number to be able to work with. That was one of the reasons why it's happening now, unless, is that correct?
That is 100% correct.
And a little clarification, the storm sewer is collapsed and completely broken. We couldn't even scope it. Is that's correct? And so that's completely not functioning right now.
Correct.
So we've actually, and if we look at, I think somebody brought up in the Public Works meeting, had we taken care of things a little bit faster, and I hate to bring up hindsight on the South Beach Access Road, we would have had less of a problem to fix there. So while we might have normally put that project off because it doesn't have any apparent immediate threat to the bluff or anything like that, things are happening underground that we wouldn't want to be dealing with later. So this, in a way, the project being potentially pushed up is a good thing as it relates to our dealing with deferred maintenance issues.
Just to add, put a little more perspective, the 80/20 is on a 5-figure amount, whereas the total construction budget's almost mid-7-figure, and that splits more like 25/75.
Right.
Any other questions from the council?
I did.
Go ahead.
I had a couple questions, and perhaps I remember incorrectly. I thought when we first started talking about this, that the city's contribution, maximum contribution on this was going to be in the $100,000 range. Now, perhaps, again, perhaps I missed a meeting. But I'm looking at some, and I understand the maintenance issues. I understand that the road needs to be resurfaced. I understand we have sewer issues. But I mean, I'm looking at these numbers, and I don't know if I misheard, but perhaps I heard that the upgrade of the ring road, the additional $100,000, and the upgrade of the south car parking lot is also allocated 80/20. So that's not right. Okay. So, but even if it's not, David, if you're talking now at $800,000 of cost plus the Black engineering work, so now we're almost we're $850,000. I guess I want to understand how much of this is maintenance and repair, and how much of this is new related to the entirety of the project. It strikes me as a very big number, and it strikes me as I'm not saying it doesn't need to be done, but I'm surprised by the size.
We asked this question in Public Works, and Michael Thomas had an answer for us if he wants to. I don't know. Basically, he felt, and I guess you can speak for yourself there, because we asked this very question.
Yeah, to answer your first question, as far as the $100,000 are dollars that we earmarked for the current fiscal year. We knew going into this that we were going to potentially have some design costs. Not knowing what those were going to be, we budgeted $100,000 this year to cover those costs.
And I'm sorry, Michael, and of the 100, the only thing we will have spent or allocated or committed so far will be this part of the engineering.
53.6.
Okay.
That's it. In general, Alderman Moore is absolutely correct. This project would have been and would be on our books to do within the next 5 years, without question. The grind and overlay of not only the parking lot, but the roadway as well, but even more importantly than that storm sewer is the road tiles, the road drains, and they're not working at all. One of our biggest concerns is getting water away from that bluff. And when you have drains that are not working, the more water that filters through, the bigger question becomes about the overall stability of that bluff. So as we began to look into this more, without question, this was going to be a project where we without doubt would need to replace the storm sewer. When you're excavating, the electrical underground is older infrastructure. We knew it needed to be upgraded, so that would be item number 2. You overlay the roadway, which needs to be done, as well as the south parking lot. So those 4 items were items that we absolutely knew were on the horizon within the next 5 years, probably sooner than that.
And because Forest Park is happening, it would be accelerated to the Forest Park project. So it happened at the same time, so there was less construction over time and more efficiency in work. But you're exactly, I mean, that was the whole point of our meeting, I think. What the hell happened to this $100,000 number?
I mean, I guess I'd still be interested in just more out of information. That if let's say this project weren't going forward, I'd like to know what our true maintenance costs would be. If we had to, over a 5-year period perhaps, Michael, as you said, I mean, what would our road work be? Perhaps we're going to need to spend $151,450 for the sewer. I get that. But it'd be interesting to know, I'd just love to see a comparison of between what we'd have to do for maintenance over 5 years versus what we're doing because the project is kind of going from the start.
Well, I think we need to clarify, though. What Michael is saying is you will spend this money either today or within the next 5 years.
Well, that's what I'm asking.
Plus,
I'm just
over and above that, there may be some maintenance costs, annual maintenance costs to repair, do pothole repairs and those kinds of things during this period of time where we limp it along. But I think it's important to recognize that this is not new money. This is not money that we would not otherwise pay for. It's just that, in effect, what we're doing is accelerating what we might have otherwise done over the course of 5 years to years 1 or 2 in order to leverage another $2.3 million of private donation to make improvements over and above that. And I think that's where the confusion came in, is maybe we weren't clear enough, because keep in mind, when we put a placeholder in the budget for $100,000, we hadn't even approved the master plan at that point in time. So we had absolutely no idea what it was going to take or cost or what the city's share was going to be. And that's why we threw in $100,000 just for engineering or design costs, knowing that if we were going to use the same formula that we used for Market Square 2000, where we were going to pay for our infrastructure, you're going to pay for everything else. And so we knew that that was how it was going to be divided coming down the road.
Okay, so that was what I was trying to get to. So the answer is we'd have to do this whether or not this project were on board or not.
That is correct.
Okay.
Just, again, expanding on it, you know, we have a capital improvement budget going forward for the next fiscal year. And again, if all of these items went ahead in the next fiscal year, we'd have to be prepared to go ahead. If the fundraising isn't sufficient to implement those items, is there a possibility we might defer those items? Maybe not do the ring road next year, again, if there isn't enough financing from Forest Park.
I think it's an excellent question, and I think staff is going to have to work closely with the board to see where they're at, because we obviously put a high priority on what I would call the infrastructure improvements first. The landscaping, the memorials, that can all come later, but we need to get this work done. And I think that if they came back and said, you know what, we just don't have the money to do anything, we're still probably within the next 2 to 3 years max looking, you know, the storm sewer I think is the one that you're most concerned about from a public standpoint. Those would be the ones that we would still have to go forward even if the project board didn't raise a nickel.
And I think what we heard about the bluff and the drain tiles there is a natural bluff is more healthy and more stable than a affected bluff with broken drain tiles. The ground doesn't perk well, and things are happening where there's broken drain tiles that wouldn't happen on a natural bluff left alone.
Right.
So we've caused a problem, we've let it get neglected. There's many ways to handle the water that are being currently debated, but the one that would be budgeted for would be the replacement of the drainage system.
And from a timing standpoint, just like all of our capital improvement projects, once we receive acknowledgement and approval from City Council yourselves at the November 19th budget meeting, from that point on through the end of January, we go into design. where we do all the surveying, we get all the design done, and it's the best time to bid projects out or during the winter months. That's when contractors are lining up their work. So that's where part of this timing is coming from, and that we need to have time to get design completed, or Waldeck does, I should say, and get documents ready to be put out on the street, bid them formally, and come back to City Council potentially, assuming funds are available from the 501c3, come back for City Council approval.
And they
in March.
indicated that they would be prepared either with, what kind of funding did they say? A line of credit or donations, but they'd be ready to move either way. I guess, and there's people here that can speak to that.
That's to be seen.
Yes.
Any other questions?
I would just like to underscore that I think we should be sensitive to the ongoing maintenance. That if we didn't do this project, we would do a certain caliber of sewer, lighting, and road. And clearly, the Forest Park Board wants to upgrade the stature of some of the finishes, let's say. And I would just like to make sure we're not using off the edge of the bell curve exotic finishes that are going to cost us double to maintain on an annualized basis. That we try and be as maintenance-free in our design process as possible.
Any other questions? Any questions or comments from the public? Go to the podium, please. Yes.
Hi, ladies and gentlemen. I'm John Hendricks. I've been a resident for quite a few years. I'd like to just acknowledge your last statement, sir. There's no doubt about it. With the improvements, and there's no doubt that the maintenance cost will increase. One can't envision having all these pathways, the quote maintenance-free benches that are stone, and we know that nothing is maintenance-free in the real world. So I just want to warn you that that will happen. Not a biggie. My main question is actually, does anyone remember what the conditions were? There were 5, I think, to this Forest Park plan. And if so, could anyone explain whether the conditions have been met or agreed upon? I think we were discussing, I recall maybe abandoning the bioswale idea, maybe looking at the width of the roadway. I can't remember, but perhaps Mr. Cowhey could address that when I get through, and give us some kind of indication as to how that was resolved. If we have the new storms and a permeable road, and indeed, I understand the parking lot, the south parking lot, might be made of some permeable material. Again, would there be a need for the bioswale? It seems to me that it takes up, oh gosh, it's almost a third of the parking lot. We are planning to increase the parking lot on the south side by 15 or 20 feet, which is closer to the Lake Road, which will make it even more obvious than it is right now. It's been entirely hidden for the last 30 years, and now we have clear view of the parking lot, not something I really welcome. And the addition of the 15 or 20 feet will result in no additional parking, not one extra car. And if a bioswale is not really needed there, maybe it can be relocated somewhere else, why increase the size of the South Park? I want to thank you gentlemen very much for your wonderful help in this project. It's caused me a lot of angst, and I know a lot of sleepless nights for you too, and I hope we can resolve this to some way that we can make it beautiful as well as relatively maintenance-free. And just remember, these paths are not going to be maintenance-free. You're going to have to weed whack every one of those paths instead of just running over the lawn right now with a major lawnmower. Every one of these things is going to have to be hand-tended. And just keep that in mind. Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you, sir. Do you want to respond to any of the questions that were raised?
I think that the city manager has punted it to the city attorney. The agreement that's been prepared and is presented before you tonight actually addresses it in the following fashion. We have the master plan that was originally presented as a concept plan, as a gift, and has since been refined, and there are still some final tweaks being made to that. That and the certificate of appropriateness that the Historic Preservation Commission issued, which I believe has the conditions that Mr. Hendricks was speaking about, are combined the master plan for purposes of this agreement. Under the agreement, all of the plans are going to have to come back for final review and ultimately approval by the city. And at the time of that review, there will be, just as with any other kind of building plans, an assessment of whether they conform to the conditions of the certificate of appropriateness. To the extent that there's any ambiguity as to that conformity, that's going to be something that the city council can ultimately determine. So when we look at the conditions of the certificate of appropriateness and the ultimate plans for development, those will be undertaken with the same type of review we have with any other kind of building project that would be subject to the Historic Preservation Commission's review.
Okay. Does that answer all the questions? You had questions about the parking lot also?
I think and I might ask Michael Thomas to address that, or Mr. Bleck, I think, is also here, because that's still a component of the plan, I guess, that is being discussed between the staff and the engineers. There's some that feel very strongly that it's appropriate to put in this plan because it's a natural cleansing, if you will, of the stormwater that's being collected by from the parking lot before it enters into the ravine. It's not dissimilar to what we have at our municipal service building out there. And again, I think part of the design here is to come up with sustainable, environmentally friendly practices, and whether we put just the bioswale in the parking lot, whether we put it in other areas of the park itself, are still those design features that are still being worked out between the engineers for the city and for the project board.
Okay. Does that respond to all the questions you raised, sir?
Thank you. My name is Rami Lopez. I live at 410 East Woodland Road. And first of all, I wanted to just note that what the Director of Public Works said earlier about making the engineering department more accessible, and his commitment to having engineers use aesthetics and be sensitive to preservation is a really important step in the right direction. And I'm sure I can say that there will be a lot of excited members of the Lake Forest Preservation Foundation when they hear of that commitment. I wanted to take up your point, Alderman Adelman, about the cost here. This is a very simple little park. And when we began, it was a simple little project. It was pretty much the idea of resurfacing that short length of road, redoing the parking lot, adding landscaping, and getting amenities consistent with each other. This has become an enormous project. And the road has to move now to accommodate a pathway along the bluff, which I might add, I would like to know if the city engineer, which we don't have anymore, has determined whether that path is consistent with the steep slopes ordinance, and when we might attend a meeting where that's discussed. And to that point of maintenance, if you put in that path, as Mr. Hendricks was trying to say, that is a large element of maintenance, and the gardens that are along it is another cost of maintenance. Presumably they need watering, a watering system. I don't know, but put in a new garden, they have to be watered. So I would like to ask your continued vigilance in watching those elements. In addition, I'd like to say that I'm wondering whether there has been this is a public park, but it's being done privately by a private group. And we have seen virtually no public meetings. I don't know what this plan looks like, and I'm right there trying to figure it out all the time. I would like to know how it's become consistent with the conditions that you laid down 6 months ago, and I don't want to wait for each element to be taken up under a certificate of appropriateness. Your materials tonight said that the city staff has been meeting with this private group. Actually, I'd like to know who that city staff is, because I'd like to know who to ask questions of. I can't ask them of the private group. I've been told that there's just not enough time for that private group to answer questions, so I would like to ask somebody in the city. Who is it? Last, I would like to ask you not to approve this tonight. Take some time. I think I'm not alone in asking this question about the big cost here. $800,000 plus engineering, and we don't even know yet, is a huge amount of money given all the other landscaping things that we have in front of us. The Emerald Ash Borer, Route 60 project. There's a lot of costs going on here, and how does this fit into our other parks, our other engineering costs? So can we take our time? I haven't read this agreement. Ms. Berger just helped me figure out how to access it just today on the website. So people like me have not had a chance to read this agreement. Would like transparency as much as possible. Thank you.
Can we respond to the questions that she raised?
Certainly. I think from a standpoint of who is responsible, ultimately I am. But I will say that Kathy Cerniak, Mary Van Arsdale, Chuck Myers, Michael Thomas, Ramesh Kanperde, when he was here, everybody was involved in some capacity. I would also like to say, for the public record, and I know a few of you have been copied on the numerous emails, is that there has been a lot of communication back and forth with Mrs. Lopat and city staff and even members of the Forest Park Project Board, and we have answered a lot of questions. Yes, there's still a lot of questions that remain out there, but I think we're taking this one step at a time, and I think, as the city attorney mentioned, is that this is going to be an ongoing process. It's going to be an ongoing dialogue as further plans are refined and developed. I'm not sure that they've done any work with respect to the memorials or some of the other components of that, because, again, we needed to get the agreement in place. We needed to finalize the agreements between the Forest Park Project Board and their consultants and so forth, and move forward. I think, again, I would underscore, and I think all of you have a copy of the map in front of you, is that the road is not effectively moving. It is in some areas, but after many public meetings and much work by not only this city council, but the HPC and the Park and Rec Board, ultimately the ring road is effectively staying in the area that it's always been, with a few tweaks here and there. There are a few enhancements that are related to that, which the staff strongly supports at this point in time. But I think that, as has been mentioned multiple times here this evening, is that these would be costs that we would normally have to incur as a part of our ongoing maintenance of any of our infrastructure within the city of Lake Forest. The other question that's come up with respect to, I think, ongoing maintenance, and staff is very sensitive to that issue, and that's why Mary Van Arsdale and Chuck Myers are working very closely with the project board and their staff and their consultants to make sure that landscape materials and other things that are put in place are as low maintenance as possible. That's effectively what's out there right now, and we would like to see that continue, although in a much nicer manner than is currently out there. Also, and I guess I would ask the chairman of the project board, Ralph Gesualdo, who is here this evening, to talk about the concept of an endowment. Similar endowment was put in place for Market Square 2000. You might recall every April, whenever we want to spend money from that endowment fund, it has to come to the city council. But yeah, there is ongoing plants that die and some other things, but there was enough funds set aside that we tap those funds whenever we need to make improvements, and I would expect that the same kind of endowment would be created here, but I don't want to speak for the project board, but I'll let them respond.
It's one of our goals to raise an endowment during our fundraising project for just what Alderman said, is that we want to make sure that if we've increased the cost of maintenance, that we have an endowment to make sure that not only we're not a burden on the city, but to make sure that the items that we've put in the park are long lasting in the park and not something that just gets knocked down or taken away because of the maintenance costs in the future. So it is our goal to raise an endowment as part of our fundraising to take care of those items that you bring up today some people in the audience have brought up as well.
Thank you. Would you like to briefly address the pros and cons of our executing this agreement tonight or not?
Well, I guess I'm not sure I see any benefit to not acting and moving forward. As I emphasize, this is not the last time you're going to see this. This is just another step in the process. What effectively you have before you this evening is an agreement that sets in place how we will execute the plan as it moves forward. We still have to put our share in the budget. We still have to include it in the capital improvements plan. We still have to, as Michael indicated, actually do the real design, finish the design work for the improvements that are there. We'll have to bid them out. We don't know what the final costs are going to be until we get those final plans and when we bid them out. And there are going to be other components that will come back to the City Council in the future. So I think I don't see any reason not to. I believe that the Park and Rec Board would probably like for us to move forward because they want to get on with their fundraising, and they need to know that the city is a partner in this plan in order to be able to go out and really start raising the monies within the community.
Yeah, I guess I would just echo Bob's comments. We think it's crucial that it be passed tonight to start our fundraising. You know, one of the objectives that we have is to make sure that in the spring, when we're ready to move forward with some of these infrastructure items, that we have the amount of funds that are available in order to move funding with the $800,000 that's being spent by the city. So we think it's crucial to start our fundraising at this point in time. And the longer we delay getting the approval from the city, getting the agreement put in place, getting the partnership with the city for the $800,000 worth of funding, it does hold our fundraising back a little bit.
I think it's also important, when you say design, and I see people squirm in their seats in the audience, you're talking about design of a sewer system, design of a road, design of an electrical line. You're not talking about landscape design.
No, all the stuff other
than the road. Our realm is the 800,000,
right.
the infrastructure improvements that, as were explained to us in Public Works, are at worst case an acceleration of a necessary 4 to 5 year expenditure into a 1 to 2 year expenditure to coincide with a construction project that we've already unanimously approved.
Correct.
That's kind of the, so
yeah,
what we're approving tonight, if I understand it, is the ability to budget this $800,000 and the ability to commit to a level which allows the Forest Park Board to recognize our commitment and begin fundraising, and that's it.
Right, and it also sets forth their commitment too, so they understand what their responsibilities are going forward.
Whether or not there's an increase in the size of the parking lot or a bioswale, we're not voting on that now.
Correct.
These are all designed, these are Forest Park issues to be handled by the committees and groups within that.
That is correct.
Okay.
And just a general question, as far as fitting into the upcoming year's fiscal budget, we do have to kind of set what capital improvement projects are going to be undertaken, and the timeline to create that new budget is fast approaching, I believe. So,
well, it's very fast approaching because the staff was supposed to have submitted their final numbers last Friday.
Yeah.
We are meeting, I think, in less than a week to refine those numbers. They'll probably be coming to the City Council within 2 weeks for a meeting in a month. So the clock is ticking.
I'm probably the world's best procrastinator at times, but I don't see any reason to procrastinate on this. There are enough checks and balances along the way, checkpoints, so to speak, that it's going to come back for approvals. We're rapidly approaching the holiday season, which is prime time to get people in a gift-giving mood. So I think we should move it forward. A little bit off topic, the parking lot at the south end, we're going to keep that woods there, that buffer, so that it's pretty well screened with natural landscaping.
Well, some of the area has been cleared, as Mr. Hendricks indicated there, and will be re-landscaped with more deciduous material to block that eventually. But again, that's one of those steps that until we get the agreement in place, till we get the final plan done, we didn't want to just go in there and start planting willy-nilly.
Right.
But that would be a top priority to provide that natural screening.
Yeah, I'd be sensitive.
Our plan
to
calls for an improvement over what Mr. Hendricks sees today.
Yeah, good.
I would hope so. A 15 to 20% increase in the parking lot size to put in a bioswale to handle the increase in parking lot size would be a bit
Yeah, I don't actually think we've increased the parking lot, the 15
Okay.
to 20%. I think that overall, it's pretty close to what it's been. We've changed some of the dimensions of it, and it does move a little closer to Lake Avenue in one particular area in the center of it. But I think the reason for the bioswale, we just think that it's really, we have an obligation to make sure that we're cleansing the water before we send it back down into the lake. So, but we are looking at alternatives to that at this point in time.
Yeah. And in deference to Mr. Hendrick's concerns, it is pretty drastic, and having that improvement would be greatly appreciated.
Yes.
So I
And
agree
deserved.
with them.
And deserved.
Any other questions or comments from the public? All right, if not, could I have a motion to approve the forest, the actual approval is the language I'm going to use here. The City Council hereby A, approves the Forest Park Agreement, B, authorizes and directs the city manager and city attorney to finalize the exhibits to the Forest Park Agreement, and C, authorizes and directs the mayor and city clerk to thereafter execute and attest the Forest Park Agreement on behalf of the city. May I have a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Second? Someone?
Second?
Roll call.
Alderman Novit.
Aye.
Alderman Waldeck.
Aye.
Alderman Moore.
Aye?
Alderman Schoenheider.
Aye.
Alderman Tack. Alderman Palmer.
Aye.
Alderman Adelman.
Aye.
7 yeas, no nays, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, are there any additional items for council discussion? If not, could I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion's adjourned.
Penny? Penny?